So welcome to all who are in the future viewing this recording. We are here today to talk a little bit more about the facilities manager position. In this recording, you'll learn a little bit more about the role directly from two of our current facilities managers, so they will be able to speak best to it. So we will go ahead and get started with some introductions, just so you know who you're listening to. So my name is Morgan DiCasola, and I am a residence hall director over in Mashuda Hall. I work very closely with our facilities manager, who's also on this phone call. We share an office space, and just, day-to-day things. We work very closely together. So each person hired as a facilities manager will be supervised by an RHD, along with a lot of other support people. But I am someone that you would work closely with should you be hired in the position within Mashuda Hall, along with lots of other residence hall directors. So I will let Chris introduce himself, and then we'll proceed with some questions.
Hello everyone, my name is Chris King. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm a senior here studying educational studies, social welfare and justice with a minor in human resources. And this is my second year serving as the Mashuda facilities manager.
Hello everyone. My name is Luis Perez Espindola. I'm a senior here in Marquette studying biomedical sciences and psychology. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I am the first year FM at Eckstein Tower.
Perfect. All right. So we have some pros on the chat today. So I have come up with a variety of questions for our current facilities managers to answer. Should you have additional questions, we will include some contact information, but I'm hoping that these questions will give whoever is interested in the position just a general idea of what the job is like, what to expect, how to prep, all that good stuff. So I will go through and answer the questions or ask the questions. If you each can answer, if you feel like you have nothing to add or just like want to move on, don't feel pressure, but I'll just open the question. And if you both want to answer it, that would be helpful. Would love to hear both of your experiences. So my first question for you both is just a real simple one. What would you choose to apply for the FM role?
I would say one of the biggest draws would be the leadership opportunities, but also just like one of the biggest reasons for me is that I am going into the student affairs field, which is not a requirement for this position, but this job gives me a lot of direct experience working in roles and working with people who are currently in roles that I may end up working in one day. So it gives me a really good idea of kind of like the field that I want to go into, the different careers that I can have and what the jobs look like. But it also just teaches you so much about so many useful skills that you can use later on in professional careers. And then it's also just, there's fun parts to it too. So there's a lot of benefits to working in, but my biggest reason is because I'm going into student affairs.
I want to add the same thing that Chris said. It basically translates any great other opportunities later in life. So that's why the supervision, the administrative skills that you'll be developing in this role is great.
Perfect. Thank you. So I think a big part of your job, as I have learned, is supervision, which can be kind of scary to someone who might be applying to this role. The fact that you supervise your peers. So are we good? Did it go away for you too? No. Okay. Great. Moving on. So back to supervising your peers. So if you can just talk a little bit about, like, is it difficult to supervise your peers? How many people do you supervise? And like kind of what support do you also get from supervision? Like who supports you, who supervises you, who can you go to? But just a little bit about supervision in the FM role.
Zach, we can just keep the same. I would say it's definitely like one of the most challenging parts of the role, like getting into it, especially like it's not a requirement to have had any supervision experience in the past. And then also, as you mentioned, supervising your peers. So there's a lot of like kind of learning as you go that you do in the role. It's not like you're prepared and ready to go for your day one. Like once you get into it, you're learning from the start. So you may start your supervision style one way and then kind of like work with it another way. What I will say helps, especially with like supervising your peers, is treating them as such. So there's a balance to be figured out of like being their supervisor, but then also being one of their peers. Like they're in classes too. They're like, when I started last year, I had DRs who were in grades above me. And so learning how to like draw on their experience, making sure that they still feel respected and like you treat them as a person is really just kind of like the best way to build those relationships. They just want to feel like you value them as a peer and that you don't just act as their supervisor all the time. In terms of how many, last year I had 16 DRs for the most part, and then this year I started off with 14. But over the summer, I worked in a role where I was supervising all the front desks, and I supervised 45 to 50 on a daily basis. So I have a variety of experience.
I did want to add to that last question that Morgan said. So basically, who's going to support you when you are supervising others is your hall director. They have supervision skills within supervising resident assistants, and then they also supervise you, so that you can always look forward to them helping you out. And there's also other hall directors such as Morgan who could help out if I had any other issues regarding my own building or other buildings.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So supervising DR is pretty fun part of the job, making sure those desks are functioning. Just in terms of other parts of the role, obviously working with facilities and just managing a building, managing other people. Did you have previous facilities or management experience prior to applying to this role?
I personally didn't have any type of skills or skill set. I did have a good understanding of like what the desk was and what the desk meant, because I was a desk receptionist for both the commons and for apartments. So I had a great idea of how to manage that. But facilities wise, there wasn't a lot that I knew besides knowing call the facilities manager on duty, which is another part of our role as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I have like direct management experience in a grocery store that for my last few months I did work as like a cashier supervisor, but I wasn't in terms of like their direct supervisor. I was just kind of more like someone who would like oversee the front end for like a few hours while people were on breaks, or while like there was that last few hours of the night where we didn't have a manager there the whole time. But then also similar to Luis, I worked as a desk receptionist my first 2 years here, which gives you the best insight into what the FM does because they're your direct supervisor. In terms of facilities, I knew absolutely nothing about facilities going into this role, but they completely understand that when you come into this role. So they give you all sorts of trainings. They're there for you. They're there to help you understand what the facilities part of the role is, because they do understand that like you probably have never worked in this kind of role.
Yes, absolutely. And for those listening, it's not like you are the plumber on call. You are not fixing the things. You are pretty much the point person. You are calling. So no facilities experience required. Lots of learning as you go, similar to my job. So along with that, what would you both say makes a good facilities manager? And specifically, since you both mentioned you are seniors, what qualities would you look for someone to take over your specific job?
I would definitely say someone who is dedicated, but also like ready to put the work, like, and also ready to put the work in. This role is, like I said, it's learning as you go, but it also is probably one of the most difficult role I have ever held. There's so many different moving parts to it. There's a lot of responsibility that gets put onto you. You're doing it kind of every single day. So I would just like, and you have to put the work into it. I can say that like, it's easier now for me, but it's only because it's my second year. And so I put the work in my first year to really get a good understanding of what I needed to do in the role, how to do it well, how to really understand my building and everyone that I've worked with. But it's really just that key part of like being here, being present with your staff. I have a fantastic staff. And especially this year, most of my staff who worked last year came back this year. So it's just really working on developing them and their skills, training them to make sure that they know what they're doing. But it really is just about putting the work in and putting the time in so that everyone is successful.
Yeah, I'll echo what Chris was saying. Basically, understanding how to be a leader in front of your peers, not only your desk receptionist, but also your RA staff, your hall directors as well. Like understanding that overall, most of us are in that senior level position, so they'll look towards you for like some type of supervision. I personally held a role as a resident assistant in Wells for a while, so a lot of the comments that I get from my RA peers would be, how do I do this now that I'm in this new role? But the same thing happens with my desk receptionist, where I'm like, oh, what is happening here? And then they look towards you for that supervision, but also, please help me out.
Awesome. Love that. Okay, so a little bit more about the FM position. So what would you say has been the biggest learning curve for you as a facilities manager?
I can easily answer this one because it's something I talk about all the time. Balancing the role like with life in a way. So taking on this role, I've worked in jobs since I was 16 years old, but this was the first job that I ever held that was paid through stipend, which is a version of salary. If you don't know what a stipend is, it's not hourly pay, so it's not like you come into the office, clock in, and then when you're done, you clock out and leave. You're kind of always on the clock in a way. And then you're also a live-in staff member. So it's just kind of like living where you work and balancing all of that. So it took me a while, especially starting during a year of COVID and lockdown and being in the building most of the time anyways. It was really hard to kind of figure out a way to feel like I was working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because you were not expected to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at all. And so that was probably my biggest thing, and I got a lot better about it this year and throughout last year. But it's just, yeah, definitely figuring out how to like feel like you are not working all day every day and you are not responsible for this building and your staff at all times.
I'll agree with that. I think setting those boundaries is really important. Another big thing that happened for me was basically understanding who to call. So a lot of our job is mediating between who has to be reached out to fix a certain problem. And when you're new to the job, you're like, oh, damn, like, I don't know who to call. Like, this could be 3 different people. Who do I call and who do I need to bother in the middle of the night, perhaps? So that's the scariest part for me.
Same, definitely same. All right, so along with some benefits, just in general, what would you say is the most beneficial part to the FM role?
Do you mean like material wise or like skill wise?
Let's say both, because it is one of my questions later on of like, what are some perks of being an FM? Because that's important to those who are applying as well. So if you can talk a little bit about the like physical benefits, but then also like, yes, what have you gotten from this position that is super meaningful for your life?
Personally, I think material wise, it's the apartment that's nice. You have a kitchen and you have a bathroom. The apartment varies through, through residence hall, but you also get an office, you get a work phone, and I think those are the biggest perks that we have at the moment. Hopefully more. And then skill-wise, I think that supervision skill is really the most important part because you can translate it to any other job, any role that you would want to later on in life.
Yeah, I would echo all of those kind of material perks to it, but then also like kind of like more in depth with that. It's nice to like, you live in a residence hall, but you're not like still treated as like an underclassman and still treated as like a resident of that building. There's a lot of like independence that you get with it. Like you no longer have to scan in at the front desk. You do get to, like Luis touched on the apartment. One of the perks of the apartment. On top of everything else is you get to stay in your apartment year round. So even when the residence halls are closed for winter break, for summer break, you still get to get a front door key or have swipe access, and you get to live in that apartment year round, which is really nice. And then I would just say, like, skill wise, I like just looking back, I started this role as a junior. And so looking back to myself between like my sophomore year and now, I have just grown so much as a person. Like the professionalism, the like you notice in yourself too of like I joke all the time about like it's impossible for me to not send a professional email. Like you develop those communication skills, working well on a team, working with others, being a supervisor, like suddenly just like at the beginning, it feels like you're like learning how to be a supervisor and this, and then it kind of just suddenly becomes like who you are, like as a person, like while you're in the building and everything, like it just kind of becomes like an aspect of what you do. So it feels less like work and just kind of like your lifestyle every day. And so it's just like, I've just learned so much from this job that I'm going to be able to take into future roles and being like, it's not going to feel as overwhelming when I go to start a 9-to-5 job and you're working and doing all of this and have all this responsibility. So I would just, yeah, you learn so much and you grow so much as a person in this role.
Wonderful. Thank you. All good things to hear. So along with the two of you, there are some other facilities managers. So how many facilities managers are there total? What is your kind of staff dynamic like as a team of facilities managers throughout campus? And do you all get along with each other? Because I think that's important for an applicant to know.
Yes, so there currently are 9 facilities managers and then 4 apartments managers. This year we are down a facilities manager because we didn't open O'Donnell, but the hope is to reopen in the future, so maybe it'll go back up to 10. I would say this year we have a great group of managers. We're, especially with training and how much time we spend together in August before and over the summer, if you stay over the summer, that bonding that we kind of start with each other, and then just to kind of like automatically knowing that that's our support, like our biggest support system, because one of the things with this role is it's like you're the only person in your role in the building. And so it's just like how Louise kind of touched on it, like everyone in the building kind of like looks up to you. So like the RAs, the residents, the DRs. And while yes, your RHD is your supervisor, you don't want to like completely depend on them all the time for like being your support, especially when it's just like that, like end of the day, like I just need to rant about something. So the managers are really great because we all understand what each other is like going through. We all sit in meetings together, we get the same emails, and kind of deal with similar situations. So it serves as a really good group. And so I'd say like this year we all get along great. There have like, obviously with 13 people, you can never expect 13 random people to be complete best friends with each other, but in terms of working relationship, we all like get along really well, and I think that's another thing that you learn, or a helpful skill to learn going into the future, is like you're always going to be joining some staff, and like the expectation is that you're never supposed to like be expected to be best friends with every single person that you're ever going to work with, but you just need to be able to work well with them. And I think this year's group does a really good job with that.
No? Okay, great. Thank you, Chris. All right, so something that I think we've mentioned a few times in this chat is being on duty. Assuming that perhaps there might be some people watching this that they don't know what duty means, can you talk a little bit about what it means to be on duty as a facilities manager? Maybe what a typical duty week or weekend would look like. I know you're not on duty for the week, but if you're on duty just like on a Tuesday versus a Saturday, talk a little bit about that, the time commitment, calls, what that means. But talk to me about duty.
I'll go first. I did want to mention, I know a lot of the people who transition into the facilities manager role are from the RA group. It's not the same thing as an RA on duty. It's completely different. It's a similar idea that you have certain times where you have to be on duty, but it doesn't translate that you have to be up all night to work your role. Specifically for the weekday ones, I'm just thinking we start at 4:30 p.m. and we're off at 8 a.m. when the workday starts. Within that time period, you could receive certain calls about facilities issues within other buildings. You most likely would go to that building, take a set of eyes into the issue, and then go to the next steps of like, who should I call and how should I manage this situation? And I think Chris could talk a little bit about the weekend.
Yeah, so I've been in the duty rotation since May of 2020. Duty is stressful. Duty is tiring. Duty is hard. I don't mean that in a way of like scaring you away from it, but like there's just a lot to do, especially how Louise already touched on, when the difference between, or one big difference is like when you're an RA on duty, you're only on duty for your building. When you're a manager on duty, regardless of what time of the week it is, you are responsible for all 10 residence halls or 9 residence halls right now, and then all the apartment buildings. So you really could get a call at any time, anywhere. You can get woken up in the middle of the night for calls. There's 7 a.m. no-shows that managers are responsible for. And so there's just like a variety of just kind of like different things that go into it. Weekend duty, I would say, is a little bit more stressful than weekday duty. It's just because during the week, there's a little bit more kind of like people around to kind of like help out with certain situations, or there's like, I would say that like not as many situations kind of happen during the week. It's usually on the weekend when less people are around, or when there's a little bit like kind of more going on in the halls. And so things are more likely to kind of like get broken, or like elevators going down. Also with weekends, you're on duty from 4:30 on Friday afternoon until 8 a.m. on Monday morning. So you're just that entire weekend, you're carrying your work phone and you don't know when you're going to get a call, what call you're going to get. If you're going to be in the middle of like shampooing your hair in the shower and the phone goes off and you got to like hop out with still like shampoo covering your head. I've done it before. Or like midway through brushing your teeth, midway through cooking, and now suddenly you're like running across campus with a half-cooked breakfast sandwich in your head. And so there's a lot to it, but I mean, there's a lot of support with it too. So don't feel like you're the only one who's responsible for campus. You can always, Louis mentioned like the who to call when. At first, it's a little daunting to be like, oh, it's 1 a.m. I don't want to call and wake up like the hall director on duty. But you learn to kind of like get over that in a way and just like learn to be more okay with it, because they also know that they're on duty and they're there for you. So even if it's anything from like a basic simple question, or if it's a situation that like, we have some situations that require like the hall director on duty be looped in to begin with. So they know to expect those calls from us as well. And they're there to answer our questions. They're there to offer like support for us. We always are going to tell you when you come into this role, it's better to ask than to just kind of like guess. Nobody's going to be mad at you for calling and asking them questions, because we all want to make sure that you are doing things right, but then you also feel like you're kind of supported in what you're doing. You don't feel like alone and like all of this responsibility is on you. So there's pros and cons to duty. It's a lot. It's stressful. But yeah, you get through it. I call it, like I always talk of like my duty days are my treat myself days. And get yourself a pizza, because as I said, I don't like to cook while I'm on duty anymore after getting interrupted mid-cooking. So I go and get myself a pizza. I don't save homework for duty, so then I can just have my pizza and just kind of either read or just watch a movie, so that you're like relaxing in a way, or trying to get yourself to relax, even though you're just kind of expecting that phone to go up at any second. And then, yeah, so just kind of you get through it. And there's, again, like I said, there's so many supports there for you.
Yes, you always get through it, and you're on call minimally with one other hall director on the weekends too. So lots of support, and then there's someone above the hall director that's also on call. So like there will always be someone. But yes, duty is a big part of the job. And especially to those RAs who might be considering applying, it's definitely different. You are not bound to your building, you are bound to campus. So that means a lot of different things. So potentially lots of phone calls, potentially very quiet duty nights, a little bit of everything. So lots of support to be given, but duty can be intense and it's a big part of the job. All right, so let's transition to my next question, specifically just for people that are watching this and thinking, okay, am I gonna apply? Is this a good fit for me? What is something that you wish you knew before you did ultimately apply for this position?
I would say the first thing I always stress is that DR experience. We kind of built it in a little bit with this year's batch kind of coming in. We required a little bit more of like shadowing the current FM, and then also shadowing the desk a lot. But nothing really beats the experience of like physically like working as a DR, or just like if you're already an RA and you're applying, that's okay. Like there's a lot of valuable experiences that RAs bring to the role as well, especially like that like confrontation, living in, and just like all the things you balance as an RA. But when you go into a role where you're going to be supervising DRs, it just kind of helps to really understand the role of the DR, the people who work in that role. They're really going to appreciate if you come in and you already know what you're doing. I remember I had an FM my sophomore year who always was heavily relying on me as their DR to tell them how to do their jobs. And that's never like something you want out of a supervisor. And so I would say, like, as you're thinking about applying and you have so much time before you even start the role, it wouldn't even be until August of next year if you're an FM, or it wouldn't be till May if you were applying for the AM role. Just getting a chance to go and interact with DRs, learn about their roles, sit and do shadowing sessions. It doesn't even have to be at the building that you may end up taking over at. Talk to your current FM and see if you can set that up just to kind of like get that experience, get any experience that you can to just really get a like good understanding of the role before you send in that application, I think would be best. So yeah, definitely talk to your current FM, and just they are happy to help you get any experience that you need before you apply. And then once you apply and get accepted, happy to set you up with like any sort of anything to really prepare you for what kind of like you're taking over. So I think that'd be the biggest thing. It's just like I should have taken more advantage of FMs that I had in the past and more advantage of like the different people that I worked with and learning about all the different roles, because you're working with a lot of different roles when you get into this job. So it's important to kind of like start getting an idea of what everyone does around you.
I was going to mention the mailroom in particular, because everyone thinks about the desk, but nobody thinks about the mailroom as part of the issues that you will be encountering as a facilities manager. That is also your responsibility in this role, and it's something we haven't mentioned yet. So you will be getting a lot of emails from angry people just trying to figure out where their packages are at. It is your responsibility to figure out what's happening. If there's ever an issue where it's just getting out of hand, your hall director is always there as a support system. I do just want to echo the idea that there's other parts of your role that you may not just see, because your facilities manager may just be that great that they are dealing with issues left and right and can do it easily. And then you're like, oh, like I can easily do that. There's just things behind the scenes where you just don't know is actually occurring.
Yes, great advice to those applying. We hope that helps. I want to end this call on a fun question, also just to give people a little bit of insight into some perhaps strange things you might deal with in this role. So can you just share a funny story that has taken place as a result of this role? Share a funny story with me. I know Chris has several, so.
All the like specific funny stories are fleeting in my mind right now. But just as I like think, I would definitely just always say like the role itself, like as you kind of work every day, it's hard to like kind of see like the fun parts to it, or like finding that like joy and everything. You kind of have to like put yourself in situations where you're gonna do it. Like I am always someone who's trying to like interact with the residents, be with the RAs, hang out with the other managers. Like you have to like kind of put yourselves in situations where you're gonna kind of have those fun stories. There's so many instances of just like things that you laugh about in the moment, whether it be out loud or in your head. Or just like things that don't seem funny to other people, but like in this role, you just kind of have to laugh at it because you're like, I have to laugh. So like something that comes to mind is recently I had a resident drop their wrong lockout key down the elevator shaft. And so just my joy that day was looking at the cameras and seeing him just kind of, he's walking, twirling the key all nice. And then suddenly you just see it go down and floop right down the elevator shaft. And then all of a sudden he comes out, he's like, just looking down at it, and I'm just cackling in my office. And there's so many things like that where it's just like you're not gonna like you'll have like funny situations in terms of the role, but everything else is kind of like you have to find the fun and the joy in everything. And then also just like surround yourself with fun people. Like I said, this manager group, we get along really well. We've had 2-3 hour conversations at hanging out at Culver's until 10:30 at night, going on coffee walks around the city, just kind of like finding ways to like find that like happiness and have those opportunities for fun. Like a manager getting pooped on by a bird, which we still talk about every day. And so many different things that can kind of come up while you're working in the role. So I just like there's so many examples like I can't think of right now, but it comes up. There's a lot of fun that you can have and a lot of things to laugh at.
Like catching birds with boxes.
Yeah, that gets added to the job description. If applicants, if you're ever curious about seeing someone catch a bird with a box, let me know. I have the videos of me doing it.
Other duties as assigned.
I was thinking of one in particular of like residents just saying the dumbest things. I'll be completely honest. It's kind of weird. Residents be saying the darnest things. I was dealing with an elevator issue and they're like, I didn't know I couldn't hop into the elevator. I was like, what? Like there's no common sense in a world where you think common sense is really there. So yeah, it happens a lot. You'll deal with it eventually. You gotta laugh at it.
Yes, all you can do is laugh. And facilities managers, I know they write duty reports every day, so I thoroughly enjoy reading those. Sometimes they even include photos. I know a facilities manager rescued a bat earlier this week. So truly lots of strange things that can happen in this role.
I just thought of another funny story, as Louise mentioned, residents saying the not most intelligent things. So I was sitting at the desk with my DR one night, setting the scene. We're just talking. Resident comes in, scans their ID in, and then she walks over to the elevator and pushes both buttons. And then she turns and looks at me and she's like, so did the top button mean up and the bottom button mean down, or are they random? And in that moment you have to just like, because she was asking me dead seriously, and so I was like, oh no, the top is up and the bottom is down. And then she was like, oh, like they should be labeled, and I was just like, oh, okay, yeah. And she got in the elevator, and then that's just those moments where you looked at my DR and I was just like was I just asked that? And so yes, you do get those dumb questions, you do get those dumb situations, and yeah, we do try to have fun in our duty reports. They're professional in a way, but we also there's a healthy amount of humor that you can throw into them to where it's still professional, but then everyone who's reading them gets a joy out of it. But yeah, so you do get some interesting questions from residents where you have to learn how to keep your straight face in the moment, and then you can laugh about it later.
Yes, that customer service piece, big part of this role for sure. Just, maintaining a good face and bringing your best self when talking with residents, regardless of the topic, up, down, labels, whatever. We've made some silly signs here this year, so you never know. But I want to thank you both so much for chatting with me today. I hope whoever is watching this allowed you to get some insight into the facilities manager position, some typical job responsibilities, a day in the life. You're hearing from some current facilities managers, things they like, things they don't like. So we hope this was helpful. I am sure you will be getting more contact information from Jenny, who is in charge of this process. But this was truly just meant for you to have a chance to sit down with some facilities managers, get to know the role, get some typical questions answered, some tips and tricks before applying. But hopefully this was helpful. Thank you, Louise and Chris, so much for taking the time and being a resource. But yes, we hope to see lots of applications, and any additional questions, feel free to reach out. But thank you both so much.